When Luke took his first love and her child to the playground, I had just gotten my health report from last week. Stomach cancer, late stage, guess it's karma. Back in the day, I took Luke away from Alice and forced them to break up. Years passed and she came back. And now, I'm about to die. I had already heard about Alice's return. She got married and had a child abroad, but the marriage didn't work out, and she quickly divorced. Luke, who is always busy, took great care of Alice. He even looked after her daughter lovingly. Thinking about the last 5 years of our marriage, Luke's passion for me seemed only to show in the bedroom. Alice had a huge fight with Luke over going abroad. He came to me to drown his sorrows, and in a drunken stupor, he kissed me. That night was my first time. Later, I got pregnant. Alice found out about us and angrily left the country. Under family pressure, Luke married me, but unfortunately, I lost the baby. At 6 months pregnant, I slipped in the shower. The doctor said I'd have a hard time having kids again. I cried for a long time, and back then, Luke would comfort me, saying it didn't matter if we didn't have children. I know he loves kids. You can tell by how he treats Alice's daughter. That night, Luke surprisingly came home early. I thought he'd spend a long time with Alice, so I didn't make dinner. He looked at the empty table and frowned unconsciously. "Diana, have you eaten dinner yet?" I subtly let go of pressing my stomach. The pain from the cancer made it impossible for me to eat. I gave a faint smile. "I'm on a diet, not eating tonight." Luke's expression softened. He walked over, embraced me, and was gentle. "You don't need to lose weight." I gently moved away from him. "Haven't eaten, right? I'll make you some noodles." Luke finished the noodles and praised me with satisfaction. "I could eat noodles you make for a lifetime." I laughed along with him, but tears welled up. "Luke, we don't have a lifetime." He was in a great mood and even got gentle in bed. Listening to Luke's calm, steady breathing, I couldn't sleep. I thought, let's spend the next 3 months pretending nothing's wrong. Let him be with me until the end. But things didn't go as planned. I brought soup I had simmered for 3 hours to Luke's law firm. Before I reached his office, I overheard some interns gossiping. "Alice has a face even women envy." Totally, she and Luke are a perfect match. Too bad Luke married young. I bit my lip, walked to the office door, and knocked gently, then pushed it open. The scene inside froze me for a moment. Luke was at his desk, Alice standing beside him. Both were smiling, discussing the documents in front of them. With the wind lifting Alice's hair slightly, it felt like college again. In a big lecture hall, me sitting in the back, quietly watching Luke explain things to Alice. They'd look at each other and smile. They really did look perfect together. My sudden entry broke the cozy scene. Luke saw me standing at the door in a daze and frowned. "Diana, what brings you here?" Alice instinctively stepped back, smiling at me. "Long time no see, Diana." I clutched the thermos. Long time indeed. The temperature's dropping. "I made some ginseng chicken soup for you." I walked over, placed the thermos on the desk. I didn't know Alice would be here. There might not be enough. Luke glanced briefly at Alice, then lightly said, "Alice just came back and doesn't have a job yet. I let her work here temporarily." I mumbled an acknowledgement. "All right. I'll let you two get back to work." He seemed to notice my strange mood, but didn't say anything. I almost fled from the office. I remembered how, back then, I couldn't find a suitable job and wanted to intern at Luke's firm, but he flatly refused. All that talk about setting bad examples or interfering with work was nonsense. For Alice, all his rules were bent. I wandered the streets aimlessly, tears freezing as the wind hit my cheeks. And then, my stomach started hurting again. Taking deep breaths, I bent over, pressing my abdomen hard. The pain was getting worse, probably a sign of the cancer worsening. The doctor advised hospitalization and chemo, but I knew it was just a delaying tactic. I'd rather die gracefully, looking pretty, than waste away losing my hair and my looks. Luke called, saying he had to work late. I didn't question if it was true, and just told him to take care. In the early hours, he came back, bringing in cold air. I could vaguely catch the scent of gardenia, Alice's perfume. Luke tried to hug me, but I pushed him away. "Go shower." He reluctantly headed to the bathroom. Listening to the water, I had a sudden urge to check his phone. After an internal struggle, I reached for it on the bedside table. I've always known Luke's phone password, but never looked at it before. I told myself, "Diana, just this once." Opening the phone, the top chat list included work contacts and me, but also Alice. Their last message exchange was 15 minutes ago, just when Luke got home. He said, "I'm home." Fighting back nausea, I scrolled through their chat. It was mostly routine stuff. That night, under the pretense of working late, Luke had taken Alice and her daughter to a Japanese restaurant. My favorite place. Alice wrote, Luke, thank you for tonight. Betty had a great time. Luke replied, if you liked it, we can go often. My hands started to shake uncontrollably. I was so absent-minded that I didn't even notice when Luke came out. He stood behind me, his voice cold. Diana, what are you doing? I turned around and held up my phone to show him. Weren't you working overtime? Luke's expression darkened as he grabbed the phone from my hand, clearly annoyed. Alice just started. As her boss, I invited her to dinner. How is that not working overtime? I laughed slowly. Luke, you still like her, don't you? He seemed caught off guard, his expression turning impatient. Diana, can you stop being so unreasonable? I bit my lip hard, forcing back my tears. Luke, 3 months. He looked taken aback. What? I softened my tone, almost begging. Stay with me for 3 months. After that, you can go find her, okay? Luke looked genuinely angry. What nonsense are you talking about? He turned around and walked out of the bedroom. I'll sleep in the guest room tonight. Calm yourself down. I lay on the cold, big bed, crying, unable to sleep all night. The next evening, Luke called me, saying Alice had invited me to her place for dinner. I was torn, but eventually decided to go. Alice's daughter opened the door. The little girl was adorable, her big, dark eyes sparkling. Hi, Auntie. I smiled slightly, bent down, and patted her soft hair. You're Betty, right? This is your first time meeting me, so I got you a Barbie doll. I hope you like it. Betty was thrilled. She thanked me, took the gift, and ran into the living room. I followed her inside. The house was small, 2 bedrooms and a living room, done in a simple black and white style. It was Luke's usual taste. I looked around and saw Alice busy in the kitchen, with Luke rolling up his sleeves to help now and then. The 2 of them were coordinating so well, like a family. I looked away and quietly sat on the couch. Alice came out with dishes, greeting me. Diana, you're here. The food's ready. Luke also came out of the kitchen at this moment. We exchanged glances but quickly looked away. Last night's argument had left our relationship tense, with neither of us willing to back down first. The table was filled with spicy, appetizing dishes. I picked up my chopsticks and took symbolic bites. Alice broke the silence. I heard from Luke that you like spicy food, so I made several dishes for you. Please try them. I smiled and took a small bite, politely commenting, it's delicious. Alice seemed slightly taken aback by my reaction, then looked at Luke. If you don't like it, I can make something else. She started to get up, but before I could respond, Luke pulled her back, frowning. No need. He turned his eyes to me with a questioning look. Alice worked hard on this. Why are you only trying a little? Aren't spicy foods your favorite? Yes, I used to love spicy food. That's exactly how I got stomach cancer from poor eating habits. Luke only knew I liked spicy food, but didn't know that now even a tiny bit of it would put me through unbearable pain. Under his intense gaze, I expressionlessly ate a bowl full of spicy crawfish. Alice's worried expression eased, and she brushed her hair behind her ear. We wanted to thank you both. I came back with Betty alone, and without Luke's help, I don't know what I would have done. I held back the upheaval in my stomach, barely making it home, before rushing to the bathroom to vomit. Luke must have heard me, standing at the bathroom door. Diana, are you okay? I stayed inside for a long time, washed my face with cold water, and finally opened the door. He looked at my sickly pale face and red eyes, finally realizing. Diana, are you unwell? I pushed past him, my voice hoarse. I'm fine. That night, Luke stayed in the master bedroom. He got into bed and held me tightly, his warm breath on my neck. Sorry, Diana, I didn't know you weren't feeling well. If something's wrong, you have to tell me. I slowly hugged him back, softly responding, millimeter. Even though I knew it was a fake warmth, I couldn't help but be drawn in. A few days later, Luke's law firm took on a major case, keeping everyone busy. Alice, being the assistant, had to stay in the office all day and asked me to pick up Betty from kindergarten. Although I felt resentment towards Alice, Betty was just a 3-year-old child, and I couldn't drag her into adult issues. I drove to the kindergarten half an hour early. As more and more parents gathered to talk about their kids' daily lives, my heart ached. If not for that accident, Luke and my child would have been in elementary school by now. Betty was curious when she saw me. Auntie, why are you here to pick me up? Where's my mom? I checked her seatbelt carefully before starting the car. Your mom is busy with work. I'll be picking you up for the next few days. Betty nodded, half understanding, and I couldn't help but pat her head again, watching her obedient demeanor. Once home, I took out some pre-prepared fruits and snacks. Betty wasn't shy at all, munching away while looking around. Auntie, your place looks like mine. That innocent comment from a child left me stunned for a few seconds. After a while, I forced a smile, then Betty can come over and play often. Alice came over around 10 p.m. She held a sleepy Betty in her arms and thanked me apologetically. I'm sorry for the trouble, Diana. I shook my head, my gaze drifting toward Luke behind her. He stood at the doorway, half hidden in the darkness, as the hall's motion sensor light turned off. I couldn't even see his expression. I only heard him say, I'll take them home and be back soon. Suppressing my emotions, I replied softly, all right. After Alice left, I busied myself in the kitchen, thinking about Luke's return. I prepared a steaming bowl of seafood porridge and set it on the table. But even at 11:30 p.m., Luke still wasn't back. I couldn't help dialing his number, only to hear the cold message that his phone was off. Worry started sinking in, and I couldn't stop my mind from racing. The round trip to Alice's place shouldn't take more than half an hour, but it had been over an hour now. Just taking her home, was it? What could be keeping him? Why was his phone off? What were they doing alone together for so long? More and more thoughts flooded my mind, and I had to force myself to calm down. I reached under the coffee table for the ashtray and lighter, lighting up a cigarette. As the stomach pain worsened, I tried to numb my nerves and pain with smoking. After 3 cigarettes, I heard the sound of the door unlocking. I glanced at the clock on the wall. It was 12:20 a.m. Luke seemed surprised to see I was still up, pausing in the doorway. Diana, why are you still awake? Without turning to look at him, I asked, why are you back so late? He hesitated for a moment. Alice made some late-night snacks, and why was your phone off? I interrupted him. Luke finally took his phone out to check. Sorry, Diana. I didn't notice my phone died. I was silent for a moment, then walked to the table, picked up the now cold seafood porridge, and dumped it straight into the trash. Luke hurried over when he saw what I was doing. Diana, don't. I turned to look him in the eye. Luke, this is the last time I'll make you a late-night snack. He froze on the spot. Maybe he smelled the smoke on me, because he frowned. Have you been smoking? I ignored him and turned to leave, but he grabbed my arm. Diana, calmly, I responded, what I do is none of your business. Luke's voice grew firmer. I'm your husband. Of course your actions are my concern. I let out a small, bitter laugh. All you see is Alice. Do you even remember you're my husband? He couldn't reply. It felt so ironic. At that moment, I was still foolishly hoping he would contradict me, but he wouldn't even bother lying to me. The next day, due to worsening stomach pain, I didn't pick up Betty. Alice called, sounding guilty. Diana, I'm sorry about last night. I saw Luke was busy with work and skipped dinner, so I thought of having him stay for some late-night snacks before heading home. I didn't expect to cause misunderstanding between you two. It's all my fault. Lying in bed, drenched in cold sweat, I bit my lip. Luke tells you everything, huh? Alice seemed to pause, then continued. Luke mentioned it in passing. I really don't want to ruin your relationship because of me and Betty. If you really don't want to ruin our relationship, then stay away from him. I angrily hung up the call. That evening, when Luke came back, he looked troubled, but I was too exhausted from the pain to care. In the middle of the night, the stomach pain hit again. As I struggled to get up, I noticed he wasn't beside me. I walked to the living room and saw Luke on the balcony, talking on the phone. His deliberately soft voice faintly reached me. Alice, you know I can't ignore this. Give me some time, all right? My fingers dug into the wall, gripping tight. Time for what? Was he planning to divorce me? Before I could think any further, Luke ended the call and walked into the living room. I quickly returned to the bed, pretending to be asleep. He tiptoed in, tucking the blanket around me, then laid down. Tears rolled down my cheeks, soaking a large patch on the blanket. I didn't even have the courage to question Luke, and I had to pretend like I knew nothing. A couple of days later, Luke called with an urgent tone, asking me to go to the hospital. I thought something had happened to him and rushed over. There, I saw Alice crying her eyes out while Luke comforted her beside her. I was completely thrown. Seeing me, his expression was terrible, his voice colder than ever. Diana, did you ask Alice to quit her job? I looked at Alice. She kept her head down, still sobbing. I asked her to stay away from you, not to. Don't you have any empathy? Luke was outraged. Alice is struggling with Betty. Why would you ask her to quit and move away? How is she supposed to survive? If it weren't for you, Alice wouldn't have left Betty alone in her new place to find a job, and Betty wouldn't have gotten burned by hot water. She's in emergency care now. I could hardly process it. How bad is Betty? Alice was too choked up to speak, so Luke replied coldly. The doctor said both her arms have second-degree burns. She'll be left with scars. Thinking about sweet little Betty, I couldn't help but tear up. Luke looked at me like I was a stranger. Diana, I didn't think you could be so selfish and indifferent. I quickly tried to explain. No, I didn't want to. Alice interjected softly, her weak voice evoking pity. Luke, Diana hasn't been a mother. She doesn't understand the difficulty of caring for a child. Don't blame her. I believe she didn't mean it. I abruptly turned to her, and she, with her red, swollen eyes, gently tugged at Luke's arm. Luke's tone was indifferent, but his words felt like thousands of needles piercing my heart, leaving me breathless. She can't be a mother. I stood there feeling like cold water had been poured all over me. I couldn't move from head to toe. After a long time, I finally tried to speak, trembling. Luke, you can't do this. I've had kids too. I've been a mother. You can't reopen my wounds in front of everyone, making me suffer again. When I got home, I had a high fever. Luke never came back. I kept calling him, but the line was always busy. In my last conscious moment, I called an ambulance. I woke up again when it was already dark. I felt around for my phone. No messages on the clean screen. Since last night, Luke hadn't come home. He couldn't even be bothered to give me a call. The faint smell of disinfectant in the air made me feel exhausted. The day I was discharged from the hospital, I finally got his long overdue phone call. As soon as I picked up, Luke's slightly anxious voice came through. Diana, where are you? When he picked me up, he seemed especially guilty. Sorry, Diana, I've been with Alice taking care of Betty these last 2 days, and didn't make it home. I asked, how's Betty doing? Luke's tone softened. We got her treated just in time. She needs some rest. The doctor prescribed medicine, and she probably won't have a scar. I nodded and didn't say anything else. The car fell silent. After a while, Luke spoke again. That day at the hospital, I was anxious. Don't take what I said to heart. I barely responded. We remained silent the rest of the way. That night, like always, Luke wanted to be intimate. Maybe my indifference annoyed him. He was rough and hasty. I couldn't even open my eyes afterward, and had to be carried to the bathroom by him for a wash. Half awake, I heard his raspy voice in my ear. Diana, you've lost a lot of weight lately. If Luke paid even a little attention, he'd notice how much I've changed. But ever since Alice came back, I no longer existed in his eyes. I thought life couldn't get worse, but reality slapped me hard. Alice got pregnant. A few days before Betty was to be discharged, I went to visit her. Alice had something to do, so I stayed by Betty's bedside. While I was focused on peeling an apple, she suddenly asked, Auntie, are you married to Uncle Luke? I smiled gently. Yes, Betty, we are married. She seemed puzzled. Then why did Mom say my brother will call Uncle Luke Dad? I froze. A bad feeling welled up inside me. What brother? Betty's big eyes turned into crescent moons as she said excitedly, Mom said there's a baby brother in her tummy. He'll play with me later. The fruit knife dropped to the floor, and the apple rolled away. I tried hard to control my emotions and cleaned up. I talked to the nurse about Betty and then walked out of the room. Somehow, I ended up at the second floor OBGYN department. 10 minutes later, Alice came out looking pale, and quickly went into a public restroom. I clenched my fists, took a deep breath, and followed her. From the stall, I heard Alice on the phone, sounding down. Luke, the doctor said the baby isn't developing well. Hearing it firsthand, I had to accept the disgusting truth. I don't remember how I got out of the hospital or back home. A surge of stomach pain hit me again. I cooked some noodles and quickly swallowed them, only to run to the bathroom to throw up everything. In the end, there was even blood. Looking at my ghostly reflection in the mirror, tears flooded out. Diana, stop torturing yourself. When Luke came home, I was still curled up on the couch. He quickly came over, took the cigarette from my hand, and said sternly, no more smoking. I slowly looked up at him. He was as gentle and handsome as ever, flawless. It seemed like nothing had changed. The living room was so silent that I could hear our breathing. I moved my lips, my voice hoarse. Luke, let's get a divorce. He frowned. Diana, what nonsense are you talking about? I forced a smile. Isn't this what you both want? Stop pretending in front of me. Luke's face grew darker. I've had a long day. Can you stop making a scene? A wave of nausea hit me. Busy with what? Sleeping with Alice. He turned livid, his voice suddenly cold. Diana, it's one thing to argue, but leave her out of this. I sneered. Luke, you make me sick. Maybe my emotions were too intense, because the nausea worsened. I rushed to the bathroom and threw up into the toilet. When I came back out, Luke was on the couch, smoking one of my cigarettes. Seeing me, he quickly stubbed it out. Diana, we need to talk. I sat down and looked at him directly. Fine, let's talk about Alice being pregnant. Luke froze, his momentary look of shame and awkwardness not escaping my notice. My heart felt like it was being torn apart and smashed to the floor. He cleared his throat. Diana, it's a long story. Let me explain. When did it happen? From when Alice came back, it hasn't even been 2 months. She's at least a month pregnant, meaning it happened right after she returned. Luke, you couldn't wait, could you? He stayed silent for a while. To me, his silence only confirmed my worst fears. My mind was filled with images of him and Alice together. I couldn't continue. Luke, you draft the divorce papers. With that, I got up and left the living room. Every second I spend with him feels suffocating. After that day, Luke didn't come home. Looks like after tearing everything apart, he doesn't even bother to pretend anymore. A week later, I messaged him, have you prepared the divorce papers? It took him a long time to reply. Come to the law firm to get them. I don't get what Luke's trying to do. This could be resolved privately, but is making it so complicated. When I arrived, Luke wasn't in his office. I patiently waited 15 minutes, but he didn't come back. I got a bit annoyed and walked over to his desk, where I found 2 sets of divorce papers. I grabbed one and turned to leave. Just then, Alice walked in. She was wearing a long, plain white dress with her blonde hair tied up, looking gentle and lovely. When she saw me, she paused and then smiled. Diana, you're here. Luke went out to get something for me. Have a seat for a bit. Her tone and posture made her seem like the real mistress of the house. I couldn't be bothered to talk to her. No need. I already got what I need. As I started to walk past her, she grabbed me. I looked at her, puzzled. Alice's eyes were filled with apology. Diana, I'm sorry. Recently, I've been unwell, so Luke has been taking care of me. He might have neglected you. I suddenly laughed. Alice, how many times are you going to play these boring tricks? She looked innocent and her eyes turned red instantly. Diana, I know you blame me. This time, I promise to stay far away from Luke and won't interfere with your lives. I didn't feel like playing along with her. Do whatever you want. Just as I reached the elevator, Alice caught up with me again. She kept yammering in my ear, Luke loves you. He's just not good at expressing it. Don't be mad at him. Seeing the elevator wasn't coming, I got even more annoyed and decided to take the stairs. Alice blocked my way like a persistent pest. What else do you want? I asked, feeling she was being neurotic. She smiled ingratiatingly. I know you want to divorce Luke. I glanced at her. Isn't that exactly what you want? Alice's expression became strange. Actually, it's not what you think. You've misunderstood Luke. I really didn't want to hear her anymore. Whatever. I moved past her, ready to go downstairs. Alice suddenly cried out and tumbled down the stairs. I reached out, but couldn't grab her in time. Just as I was about to go down, I heard a familiar, anxious voice behind me. Alice, I froze. Before I could turn around, Luke rushed past me, knocking me into the stair railing to steady myself. I saw Luke carefully cradling Alice in his arms. Her plain white dress slowly soaked in blood. Alice's face was pale, clutching her stomach weakly. Luke, my belly hurts. Luke looked tense. It's okay. We'll go to the hospital right away. Saying that, he picked her up in his arms. Alice didn't forget to glance at me and delivered the most crucial line of her performance. Don't blame Diana. She didn't do it on purpose. Then she fainted just at the right moment. Luke shot me a cold look and hurried away. It wasn't until then that I understood Alice's intent. As expected, the baby was lost. Luke, with a dark expression, questioned me. You knew she was pregnant. Why did you provoke her? I've prepared the divorce papers. What else do you want? Diana, how did you become so malicious? Looking at the familiar features of the man in front of me, I felt a sense of strangeness for the first time. My husband was openly berating me for his lover and their child, but I didn't get angry. Luke, as long as Alice says something, you believe her without a second thought and think I'm wrong. Aren't you lawyers all about evidence? Which eye of yours saw me push her down the stairs? Luke was taken aback, his voice lowering a bit. Then could Alice have fallen by herself? She's a mother. She wouldn't be so careless. I didn't want to argue anymore. There's something called surveillance. Believe it or not. I then turned and left. Just around the corner, I bumped into a passerby. The buns in her hand fell onto me. The greasy smell of meat filled my nostrils, and my stomach immediately protested. I rushed to the bathroom and vomited for a while, deciding to have a final checkup. Leaving the hospital again, I recalled the doctor's helpless shake of the head and sigh, and I suddenly changed my mind. At home, I took out the divorce papers. Luke was quite generous, giving me the house, car, and half of the savings. But what good is material wealth to someone who's about to die? I chuckled, tore the papers into pieces, and tossed them in the trash. That night, Luke came back. I guessed he had checked the surveillance footage. Neither of us mentioned what happened during the day, and he didn't say anything either. Before sleep, Luke hesitated at the bedroom door for a long time. Alice's child isn't mine. I was silent for a while. It doesn't matter anymore. He had no words, then tentatively asked, Diana, about the divorce. I responded indifferently, let's not get divorced for now. I want to celebrate one last anniversary. In 5 years of marriage, our anniversary was the only thing we both tacitly remembered. Hearing my words, Luke let out a barely audible sigh. Who knows if it was relief or disappointment. On our anniversary, I went out early and bought a lot of fresh ingredients, mostly Luke's favorites. On the way home, I ran into a flower vendor and impulsively bought a bouquet of vibrant lilies. The vendor said lilies symbolize a long and happy union, but Luke broke his promise. At 9 that night, I was still sitting by a carefully prepared dinner, waiting quietly. I then checked my phone and saw Alice's post, "Get well soon." It was a picture of her in a hospital bed with Luke caring for her beside it. And there was a special caption, "Thank you everyone for your concern. The baby has a fever, not daddy, just a good friend." I shut my phone with a blank expression and stood up to throw the lilies in the trash. At midnight, Luke came back. Maybe he noticed the cold dinner on the table. So he tiptoed into the master bedroom and whispered, "Diana, are you asleep?" After a few seconds, I replied. He sighed with a tone full of guilt. Betty had a sudden high fever. I helped take her to the hospital. Sorry for the delay. He paused and then said, "I'll make it up to you, okay?" There were no lights on inside. Neither of us could see each other's expressions. I spoke lightly, "All right, then, on my birthday next week, let's celebrate it again." Maybe my emotions were too calm, which made Luke uneasy. "Diana, you..." He trailed off, unable to say anything. Honestly, I felt quite calm. After disappointment, it all became a habit. Anyway, these days will soon come to an end. The next day, Alice, a good friend, called again with concern. "Sorry, Diana, for interrupting you and Luke on your anniversary." At that time, I was brushing my hair. Watching handfuls of it fall out, I felt unexpectedly relieved. "Alice, you must hate me, right?" She paused. "How could I?" I calmly stated the fact. "You should be the wife. I was just an accident." Alice suddenly fell silent. I continued. "You think Luke still loves you? That's why you've been arrogantly declaring your dominance in front of me all this time too." I used to think the same. I chuckled. "Alice, let's make a bet. On my birthday, I said I wanted to see the ocean. Luke drove 3 hours to take me to the beach. The winter sea breeze was pungent and bone-chilling, seeping through everything. I huddled closer into Luke's embrace, realizing there wasn't much to see. He tightened my scarf around me and then took us back to the car. Seeing the ocean was just an excuse. I just wanted to spend more time with him. The car's heater was strong, and it didn't take long for my frozen limbs to warm up. Luke took out a delicate gift box, his eyes gentle. "Diana, happy birthday." With his eager anticipation, I opened the gift box. It was a diamond necklace I had liked for a long time. I remembered spotting it at a store 6 months ago. Luke had work at the law firm then, so my conversation with the clerk ended abruptly. I didn't expect him to remember that fleeting moment. I smiled at him. "I really like it, thank you." Luke smirked and leaned over to buckle my seatbelt. I could smell his faint cedar scent, calming and soothing. In this warm and peaceful aroma, I slowly closed my eyes. Just as I was drifting into sleep, Luke gently called, "Diana, shall we go to your favorite restaurant?" I groggily shook my head. "No, I want to go home." He conceded, "All right, then we'll get a cake and head home." Seeing the warm chestnut cake, I, who hadn't had sweets in a long time, was tempted. Just as I was about to speak, Luke's phone rang. He was driving, took one glance at his phone, and directly declined the call. I knew it was Alice calling. On such a particular day, she would definitely make another attempt to assert her importance. I silently observed Luke's expression, calm and steady, nothing seemed off, until the phone rang a second time. Luke knitted his brows slightly. After hesitating for a moment, he declined the call again. But from that moment on, his demeanor became uneasy. As we neared home, Luke's phone rang again. Before he could respond, I spoke first. "Pick it up." He glanced at me and answered the call. Alice's faint, trembling voice filled the car. "Luke, someone was banging on the door outside just now. Betty and I are scared. Can you come over?" Luke comforted her gently. "Don't cry." "What's going on?" Alice's voice quivered. "I heard there's been a string of home robberies in the area. Someone was banging loudly on the door." Before she could finish, there was a sudden scream. Immediately, frantic banging sounds followed, along with Alice and Betty's cries, filling the car. Luke became instantly anxious. "Alice, call the management and the police. I'm on my way." After hanging up, he seemed to remember the silent me beside him. Luke's eyes avoided mine. "Diana, I'm afraid Alice is in danger. I need to go check on her. I'll be back soon." I stared at him for a long while before giving a gentle response. "I got out with the cake. We're close to home. I'll walk back. You go ahead." Luke seemed deeply touched by my understanding, solemnly promising, "Diana, wait for me at home. I'll be back soon." I smiled without saying a word. As the car started, I stopped him again. He rolled down the window, looking confused. Amidst the cold wind, my fragmented voice pieced together, "Luke, drive safe." I knew Luke wasn't coming back tonight. Alice had already sent me photos of her victory, snaps of Luke's back, and the sparkling necklace on her neck. It was just like the one Luke gave me that afternoon. I opened the cake box, lit a candle, and had a few bites. The rich, sweet flavor melted in my mouth, spreading warmth, followed by endless nausea. This marriage, like this cake, was precious and beautiful, but it never belonged to me. I swallowed the pills that had been ready by my bedside for a long time. Before I drifted to sleep, I still put on the necklace. Since he couldn't let go of either side, let me end this myself. As sleep overtook me, it felt like I returned to that sticky, sweltering summer night. The cold touch of Luke leaning in felt incredibly real. Only if I could do it over, I would definitely, firmly, and without hesitation, push him away. Luke's epilogue. When Diana told me to be safe on the road, I felt this weird feeling. But when I saw Alice's red, teary eyes and trembling body, I forgot about it. I started to comfort her softly. It was getting late, and I remembered Diana at home. I was about to leave when Alice grabbed my shirt nervously and asked, "Luke, I'm scared he might come back. Can you stay with me and Betty longer?" Her frightened look made me hesitate, but I agreed to stay. I called Diana to explain, but no one answered. Alice said she must be asleep. Diana had been sleeping early lately, so I thought I'd apologize to her in the morning. I spent the night on Alice's couch. Nothing happened. Early the next morning, I bought Diana her favorite steamed buns and quietly went home. There was a cake on the table with a small piece already cut out. I felt guilty right away. Passing by the master bedroom, Diana was still asleep. Light peeked through the curtains, making her face look peaceful and beautiful. I didn't wake her up. I went to the living room for water, but dropped the glass and it shattered loudly. I quickly cleaned up and rushed to the bedroom. Diana was a light sleeper and would definitely wake up. I could almost see her rubbing her sleepy eyes, asking what happened. But when I got there, she was still asleep. Something felt off. I walked to the bedside and saw an empty pill bottle. A sudden realization hit me and I shook her. Diana, when I touched her, my blood ran cold. She was lifeless, cold, and stiff. I stumbled to the living room to call an ambulance. The paramedics came and went quickly. The doctor shook his head sympathetically and said, "I'm sorry for your loss." I stood there in shock for a long time. That strange feeling I had last night, it was her saying goodbye. But why? Why leave this way? We were going to get a divorce, right? I couldn't understand. I really couldn't. After dealing with Diana's funeral, I went back to the law firm like always. Except for the sleepless nights, everything seemed normal. Until I found the diagnosis papers in her bag, and an ultrasound showing she was pregnant. I rushed to the hospital to find her doctor. The doctor looked sympathetic. "Are you Diana's husband?" From diagnosis to massive spread, it took less than 3 months. Her condition worsened quickly because she had no will to live, and she was pregnant during such a critical time. I thought her husband must have been very irresponsible. I went home numbly. Seeing the familiar couch, I thought of her smoking late at night. She must have been in so much pain. But what was I doing then? I was running around for Alice, fighting with Diana over Alice's accidental pregnancy with her ex-husband, and our child left without me ever knowing. I broke down, clutching those thin diagnosis papers, crying on the floor. I locked myself away for 3 days. On the 4th day, Alice showed up. She was startled by how I looked. I told her to leave, but she kept talking at the door, trying to comfort me. I lost it and threw Diana's phone at her. "What did you send her that night she killed herself?" Alice froze. After a few seconds, she teared up. "I didn't mean anything, just showed her some stuff." I felt a surge of disgust. "No, you did it on purpose. You were showing off that I didn't celebrate her birthday and ran to be with you. The necklace was supposed to be her gift, but you insisted on having one too. Alice, you drove her to this." She looked at me and started smiling. Her once gentle face turned twisted and mean. "Luke, didn't you come to me? You couldn't resist me. Now you're acting all heartbroken. Diana's death is on you. I'm just an accomplice." Enraged, I slammed the door, screaming at her to get lost. Alice spoke slowly from behind the door. "Diana was right. You don't deserve love." I slid down the door, sitting on the floor, covering my bloodshot eyes. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Diana. If there's a next life, I'll make it up to you."